about Alex. I have lived in the neighborhood for over 40 years. I have an 18-year-old daughter that doesn't fit the profile of the so-called new Bernal. I grew up doing many things on the hill, and I expect my daughter and everyone else to do the same without the fear of being attacked. Thank you. So the last thing is, so we've met for the headstone, and what we're doing now is going forward to collect for the memorial bench for Alex Neto up at Bernal Hill, because as we all know, there has been some people that have kind of messed up memorial up there, but we're going to put up a solid bench over there that nobody can mess with, and this is from all the gente from La Misión. Gracias.
Right, and I ask you to listen and share your ideas, okay? I'm going to be asking our panel a few questions, all right? They'll be meant for certain people more than others because there are certain expertises that we have on this panel that are more appropriate than for others, okay? But I do want to introduce who do we have up here. We have the mayor of La Misión, Roberto Hernandez. No introduction. He had worked with Cesar Chavez. Right? He had fought for the lowriders in the 70s and the 80s, and he is a leader. He is respected. He is someone who I am very proud to call my mentor. Okay? We have Tiny Gray Garcia, who produces Poor Pobre magazine and is consistently on the airwaves. She is a true community warrior. All right, so let's give it up to. We have Marissa Thompson. She teaches over at UC Riverside. She is a poet. She is someone who is traveling around all the time, attempting to embolden and heal the hurt that is in various lower economic class communities. Let's give her a hand. We have Ephraim Walker here, who graduated from Howard University. He also holds a JD and a Master of Fine Arts from the University of Southern California. He is a lawyer right now for the John Burris firm, but he is also a producer. He helped produce the film Fruitvale and also the film that we just saw today, and that was Amor for Alex. He is sought out by MGM, Fox, and we want to hear his ideas. Please give him a hand. Rafael Flores is a Chicano activist, educator, filmmaker of Tarascan descent. He is the co-founder of Green Eyed Media, and his work has been praised by the White House, Cannes Film Festival, and the Writers Guild Theater. All right, let's give him a round of applause. And finally, we have Adriana Camarena, who is a Mexican from Mexico, but who is now living in this multicultural barrio of La Misión since 2008. Since arriving here, she has documented stories of the Mission District's traditional residents in her project, Unsettlers, Migrants, Homies, and Mamas in the Mission District of San Francisco. She has been instrumental in this journey, especially helping out the Nietos. Let's give her a hand. Any one of you can answer these questions, but I'm hoping that Roberto, Tiny, and Adriana could lead the way for us, okay? How is the gentrification of San Francisco related to this police brutality and these police killings? Any one of you would like to volunteer to answer that? Go ahead.
I can't hear myself. For me, it's very clear, and in the case of Alex Nieto, it's even clearer. When you have a wealthier population moving into a traditional low-income, working-class neighborhood, people from that neighborhood start being policed with more intensity. You can see it everywhere in the Mission. But if you go to 16th Street, you have battalions of officers making their rounds now to harass poor people who have traditionally held those corners for a long time. And what has become evident to me over the last year is that police will prioritize the protection of property over the protection of people. So that is the connection that I find between gentrification and policing.
Thank you, Adriana.
First want to, in answer to this question, I first want to give it up to First Nations Ohlone people, prayers to people who suffered the first form of gentrification. The reason I say that is because, at least for me, first of all, I want to thank you for inviting me and thank all of you for doing the work of every single revolutionary. Thank the parents. Gracias, Padres, de Alex. But also I want to say that if we can't connect the dots to the previous gentrification and displacement, then we will never unpack this murder. That's how I feel about it. One of the things I say is settler colonialism kills, right? From Palestine to Frisco to Philippines and Iraq, but now the new form of army, our social work police and politricksters carrying deadly legislations and contracts. So you could say that the way that the genocide of poor people, the development, as I call it, of our neighborhoods, our barrios, leads to the constant threat on the backs of trabajadores, poor people, houseless people, and communities. And as the sister said, we have a non-stop army in our barrio now, thanks to this displacement and this gentrification. And it's only have to open your eyes at any one of the BART stations to see how viejos who were sitting there for years and just being there and convening, and for the sole act of convening while black or brown or poor, are now being arrested, incarcerated, and oftentimes killed. So that this spilled over into a young, beautiful warrior, community leader like Alex, to me is the tip of the iceberg. We already had a war on the poor and the working class people. We already had it. It's just that this was the tipping point. And so what I want to say, the challenge back, and I thank you, Ben, for putting that question on there, is that gentrification kills. Displacement kills. But let's connect the dots to the state-sponsored violence, to the gang injunctions, and to the original gentrification of colonization. Because this is only going to get worse. I saw tonight, thanks to the beautiful lowriders, culturas, ashe, to all y'all, we took back this 24th Street. It was hipster free.
That question is really directed towards Ephraim and Raphael. How can film be used to have a positive impact against police killings?
First of all, thank you all for coming here. It's really important that everybody's here and that we're engaging in this conversation, because we can make films as much as we want, but if we're not interfacing with the community, it doesn't matter. Now, my production company has dedicated our mission to doing this. We use film, to answer your question, the same way that our pioneers And activists have been doing it since the 1960s and 70s. To answer that question, a lot of Chicano filmmakers, especially here from the Mission District, from Central California, from all of California and the Southwest, were part of a larger movement, an international movement. It was called Third Cinema. And Third Cinema was started in Argentina, and literally there were films that were shown in the theaters, and people, after seeing these films, went outside and literally caused revolutions that took back their countries from dictators that were murdering people. Los desaparecidos is what they were called. So the Third Cinema movement began to spread all around the globe. It was really inspired by Che Guevara and Che Guevara's concept of the tricontinental revolution. And that really is Asia, Latin America, and Africa joining together and using art and media to really liberate ourselves from colonizers, as my sister was saying here. Now, this film and many of the projects that we do really operate within that legacy and that mode of expression. So many of the images that you see that are actually hidden in the actual narrative, that are little flashes and breakouts, are really meant to design to remind you of that legacy, because we have to remember the trials and tribulations that our ancestors and that our OGs and all of our mentors had to go through in order to not repeat those same mistakes. Now, this unfortunately is not the first film I've had to make about somebody who's been killed and try to heal the community using cinema. It's very important because that is the power of cinema. I had a personal friend who was murdered in Seattle. He was an Ethiopian store owner, and he was murdered by a young African-American man. I knew both of them, both parties involved. It really was a case study that I used for my master's fine arts thesis at San Francisco State University. And I returned back home, that's where I'm originally from. And we produced a film for the family of that particular young man and his family, the same way that we did it for Alex and the Nieto family here. And the real goal was to create a safe space to have a conversation about these issues. And what I learned through my research is I actually used the Castro district and the Mission district as an example, because this was one of the first neighborhoods that really started getting gentrified and studied in the entire country. And Seattle is very similar. I don't need to tell all of you that. It's the same issues, just different communities. And one thing that I noticed was there was a large population of young men of color who were extremely alienated in their own communities, couldn't feel like they could stand on their own corners because they felt that they were either going to get harassed by the police, harassed by business owners who wanted white customers, or they wanted to literally get pushed out of bus stops because they were traveling from the south side of the city to the north side of the city, and there are those invisible borders that they try to maintain through various institutions, public institutions in these cities. Now, this became a platform that we use to try to heal people. And literally, in some cases, unfortunately, in Oakland, I work in Oakland now with young men of color, part of the Black Lives and Brown Lives Matter campaign, which Ethan can also talk about. We employ these young people and we had them work on the production for Alex Nieto because we felt it was important to bring Black and Brown communities together so that they could learn from other communities that they are not formally connected to but experience the exact same things. And they are actually featured in the film as well. Now, this acts as a form of therapy, if you can believe it or not. For anybody, I'm sure for Ben included, who participated in the film, it was a form of therapy because he has to revisit traumatic incidents, and that helps us come to closure. And if we don't do these types of creative activities, then oftentimes that progresses to depression or post-traumatic stress disorder. So really, this is a way of treating mental health, but also healing communities on a larger scale.
Before gives his response to the question, and of course we want to hear that, I also want to introduce Adante Pointer, who is my homeboy. He is also the lawyer for this case. He is a native of West Oakland and a graduate of UC Berkeley and a graduate of UC Hastings College of the Law. He and I actually went to law school together. Now, I want to say something about Adante. He shared with me that when we would see each other on BART sometimes, he did not have enough money to get off of the BART. So he would have to jump over the rails so that he could go study criminal law. A super lawyer. So we welcome you, Adante. We welcome you. So we're back to it. How can film be used in a positive manner against police killings?
There was a couple of things I wanted to say. First of all, much love to Raphael, man. He created a beautiful piece of art. You know, he had reached out to me a ways back before, you know, we decided to do this film, and you know, he was always an advocate for civil rights. But when I looked at his filmmaking, I knew that he was the right person for this film. Every time I watch it, I'm blown away. So, kudos, Raphael. It was awesome, man. Another little comment. The last question that was asked about gentrification. It was funny. Right before I walked in, I saw with my own 2 eyes. There was 3 hipsters talking to the cops and saying, "What are these people doing, shutting down our street? Why are all these cars out here? We ain't gonna make a move." I don't think the cops wanted to do anything crazy, especially at a time like this. So, you know, power to the people, man. It was good to see. You know, I've seen firsthand the power that film has, probably over any other medium that we have to express ourselves. I took a job, you know, working with John Burris because I felt really passionate about civil rights. It was something I felt that I had to do. Had a nice cushy job at a big firm coming out of law school. Took a significant pay cut to come over to John's office. But it was the right thing to do. And John always talks about how, you know, he's been fighting for civil rights for 30 years. No one knew what a civil rights case was until Rodney King got beat up on camera, right? If you look historically, the Voting Rights Act of 1965 wasn't even voted upon until Bloody Sunday, when they caught children and women being beaten and bit by dogs. And in my own life, you know, working on Fruitvale Station, really kind of proved that to us. You know, like it's interesting. In our community, you know, black and brown community, police brutality is nothing new, right? We've been dealing with this forever, as long as we've been policed. Police brutality has been an issue. And I think what Ryan Coogler and I really wanted to address was the dehumanization of our young men. You know, they kill one of us, and instead of mourning the loss of a beautiful life, they instantly demonize the victim. So the victim becomes the enemy, at least in the eyes of the media. And you know, Oscar was a young black man. He was just like us. And Oscar didn't have a chance to defend himself to anyone. He couldn't say, well, you know, you don't know the circumstances in my life. You don't know what was going on with me, you know, when I got in trouble, right? Things like that. So, you know, the point of Fruitvale was to basically tell a story of a young man who was flawed, but at the end of the film, you still love him because he's a human being. You know, people are going to be people. People will make mistakes. And the message of the film, it really resonated with people in a way that, you know, to be honest, and much love to my brother Adante and to John, it brought awareness to these issues that we weren't able to achieve in the courtroom. You know, we go to trial all the time, and it's interesting when you talk to a jury. They all come from Dublin or San Ramon or San Rafael, and you want to get them to empathize with somebody who comes from the Mission District of San Francisco or from West Oakland, and to identify with their circumstances. Most of the time, it just doesn't happen. So it was beautiful, man. And so, like, you know, and forgive me for being long-winded, but I think there's an important question. You know, Fruitvale premiered June 13th. I think that's the right day. And it was interesting because, like, it was a Friday. we were in New York, you know, Ryan just did an interview with CNN. Fruitvale was in 4 theaters in Times Square. Huge for, you know, a couple kids from East Oakland, man, that never dreamed that we could do anything or have a voice, right? But the next morning when we got back, you know, the news came out that George Zimmerman walked free for killing Trayvon Martin. It created a lot of controversy. I guess it was good for the film, but it, you know, it definitely broke my heart to know that, you know, all we wanted to do was get people to see our young men as human beings. But a man killed a 16-year-old kid and nothing happened, so it was sick. And then, you know, this fall, you know, Mike Brown got killed out in Ferguson. And it seemed like even though people left Fruitvale and, you know, people in, you know, Utah and Arizona, oh, you know, I love Fruitvale. My son, he has a friend who's black, and, you know, I felt like I was watching him when I was doing that movie. Nothing really changed. It seemed to get worse. And that's when we started this program called Black Out for Human Rights. And that's just a network of concerned filmmakers making projects addressing issues of police brutality. So, you know, we produced a few shorts, mostly centered around like Black Lives and Black Lives Matter. But in my firm, we represent probably half our clients are Latino. This is not just a black issue. And that's what I reach back out to Raphael. That's what we made this film. And hopefully it brings some awareness to every community that's suffering from this problem.
Thank you. Questions directed towards Larissa, but others can answer it as well. How has poetry been used in the past to create change in society? Why is poetry such an effective tool?
I'll do my best to begin to address this question again. I know I'm not the only poet in the room. Who else writes poetry? Alejandro, thank you so much for your poem. Thank you. Tiny can talk about this too. But I really want to thank everyone. Thank you for letting me be here. I'm a student of poetry for the people with June Jordan over at UC Berkeley. And and one of the things June said was that the job of the poet, the role of the poet is to make revolution irresistible. That's what she says. And so like, it's definitely this thing where I feel your frustration over like, okay, we make this movie and then we get this kind of feedback. Sometimes it can feel that way with poetry and other art forms too. But I think, I honestly, I was having a hard time thinking of like a single poem that could then point to a cause and effect. But if we broaden the definition of poetry even to include, for example, music during the Civil Rights Movement, or Amiri Baraka and him writing Black arts, and the Black arts movement, like all of the poets coming out of the Civil Rights era who are giving voice to the frustration and the legal changes and the movement and the spirit of the people. Like poetry makes, it's the catalyst that makes, the legal changes and the other types of changes that need to come about possible. That's what I would say, I think, in terms of poetry. And then the other thing too, that the reason why it's so important to continue writing, and creating language to articulate these things is because actually the state loves poetry. That's probably why they're listening to us right now. Because, seriously, there's this book that just came out called FBI's, which is named after the poem by Richard Wright called FBI Blues, where he was very aware that J. Edgar Hoover had set up surveillance starting in 1919, surveilling the Harlem Renaissance. And following the poets and keeping files on the poets and so on and so forth. And so if you think about it, the state is always creating its own arts. I'll put that in giant quotation marks. But from, the Pledge of Allegiance to the Star Spangled Banner to, funny we're not reciting, the poem on the Statue of Liberty lately. But, like they're constantly creating their own language to fulfill their own agendas and to humanize the people who do not fit those agendas. So that's why it's so important to continue making the art that encourages that narrative constantly because they're, you know, and they will listen and they will try to support it and go down and that. So that's all.
Thank you so much. This is the final question for the evening. I had more questions, but unfortunately, time has escaped us, and actually we enjoyed our time together. But this question is addressed more towards Adante Pointer and Adriana Camarena, and that is, what updates do you have about the Alex Neto case? Updates.
Since Adante can talk a lot about the civil law case, let me address the criminal case. I know it's confusing sometimes if you don't know. Yeah, that's easier. Not everybody's a lawyer, and it's confusing sometimes to understand what's going on with the case. There's a criminal case, and the criminal cases, when a crime is committed, it is the obligation of the state to investigate it. So that's one avenue that can be followed in investigating the Alex Neto case. Those are cases that, as civilians, you might say, well, what's in my hands? In their hands is to follow civil law suit, and I'll let Adante speak to that. You'll remember that in February, Gascon finally came out and said what was the result of his investigation. And what he said after, what was it then, 9 months? No, yes, 9 months, was that he didn't find any evidence to charge the officers with any crime. So technically, at least at a local level, the criminal case has been closed by the district attorney. What does that mean, really? And I want to go back a few steps. In a criminal case, it is the prosecutor's job, in this case the district attorney, to investigate and file charges. Who usually helps in an investigation of a crime? The police. This is what happens normally. But now consider what happens when the crime is committed by someone who works for the state, for the city. The police, in this case, when they shoot someone, investigate themselves. And then the prosecutor, who has a day-to-day working relationship with police, is supposed to charge them with a crime on the evidence that the police provide. So this is why you see over and over and over again, as you saw in Ferguson with Mike Brown and Eric Gardner and every other case that we've seen throughout the years, they get away with murder. I'm telling you this because one of the demands that's still on the table is for an outside investigator. Even the district attorney, in his own report, recommended a federal investigation. That's the only honest part of his investigation. Because Gascon failed to interview the one eyewitness who contradicted the police version of events. And he closed his investigation. And they're playing a game, because the city attorney in the civil lawsuit had all the information. The city had the information for this eyewitness, and he claims that he didn't know about it. So I'm telling you this so that you will continue to support a demand for an outside investigation, a federal investigation. And to feel righteous in your anger. Because when you have constant violations of civil rights and human rights, as you see in police shootings, what happens is that the legitimacy of the state collapses. I'll speak for myself right now. The criminal justice system, insofar as police shootings go, for me is useless because it's set up to fail to provide any kind of justice. So that's my update on a criminal case. Adante can talk about the rest.
Thank you, Adriana.
this idea about justice, because the fight has been long, and we have a long road in front of us. Up to this point, as you may be aware, as Adriana mentioned, there was a criminal case, a homicide case that was looked at and investigated by the San Francisco District Attorney's Office. That resulted in what I expected, which was nothing. Because as Adriana mentioned, the police are policing themselves. And if they were policing themselves well, we wouldn't be in this position to begin with. And so there's no faith that they would come across and do a thorough investigation. But what we have as citizens and as people is we have the right to file a civil lawsuit where we get to be the prosecutor. The rabbit gets the gun, so to speak. And through the filing of that civil lawsuit, we will get the background information of these officers. We will get the interviews that the police conducted. We will essentially have an opportunity to review all the information for ourselves and figure out what actually took place up there on that hill. But the thing is, in this particular case, we had a witness. And that witness was brought to us by the community, coming together, keeping the name and the idea of what Alex represented and stood for, justice. Keeping the mission safe for those people who have been here for generations. And so a witness came forth and was brave enough to talk to my office. And that's what we're going to be using going forward. The fact that the district attorney's office failed, when I say failed, I mean with an F, failed to even go out and investigate and talk to that person shows that they had no real interest in getting to justice. So in terms of updates, what we're continuing to do through my office and with the partnership with the community, everyone here in this room, is continuing to apply pressure to the San Francisco City Attorney's Office. They don't want to release documents. They want to stonewall. They want to delay. They want to drag their feet. But we're not going anywhere. We're committed to this fight. The fact that we have all these people here who are participating with all this love and passion is what's actually keeping us going. Because it's going to be a long road, as I started off saying. But I know that we can count on you to be there along the way. So we have court in a few weeks. I'll be doing my usual thing, which is holding the city's feet to the fire by bringing up to the judge the different things that the city is failing to do or neglecting to do or unwilling to do. And I plan to force them to do more. They didn't even want to give up those names. But because of this pressure put on by people just like us right here in this room, not just me as an attorney, but for you all who are continuing to keep Alex's name on the tips of your tongue and alive in the spirit of this community, the judge heard that. And the judge made the city give up those names. So, a round of applause for the community. Really unprecedented. That was the first time that a judge has actually stepped in that way in terms of forcing the police department to hand over names.